Chances are she knows I followed her. But that don't mean she tells Slim. That depends on how she's playing it. One thing is sure. She has turned you in for a new model. That's for sure. A lot of times I have to sit in the mirror and look at myself and imagine all these things that I want to do to myself, and I didn't have to do that when I was doing this book, or how I wanted to walk, or what my posture was. So I didn't have to do that. I just sit in the booth and just kind of let it go.
The Tin Woodman, raising his axe, rushed toward the little man and cried out, "Who are you?" "I'm Oz, the Bright and Terrible." I had to do really crazy things with my face, which normally in a movie you would get called out for that because it's so obviously silly and ridiculous. But you can get away with it in this environment.
You are mistaken, Mr. Darcy, if you suppose that the mode of your declaration affected me in any other way than as it spared me the concern which I might have felt in refusing you, had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner.
Elizabeth Bennet is a phenomenal character. Because she has this spirit and she has this disregard for convention and she has a wonderful ability to say it like it is.
His hair was of a lustrous black and flowing, his teeth of pearly whiteness, but these luxuriances only formed a more horrid contrast with his watery eyes. It's a really profound and beautiful book, actually. The language is very surprising, and also the creature is 100 times more eloquent than you would ever have imagined if you'd just seen, Halloween images of this scary guy.
Everything was lovely. We had a splendid tea, and then Mr. Harmon Andrews took us all for a row on the Lake of Shining Waters, 6 of us at a time, and Jane Andrews nearly fell overboard. She was leaning out to pick water lilies, and if Mr. Andrews hadn't caught her by her sash just in the nick of time, she'd fallen in and probably been drowned. You just can't help but smile when you read this book and kind of laugh out loud and cry out loud, and I think, it brings up a lot of emotion and delight, and then on top of that, there's this, a beautiful backdrop of the Maritimes, of Prince Edward Island.
He advanced his huge hands to his knees, tightly compressing his lips. Therese, rigid and motionless, with her head thrown slightly backward, waited.
Having that moment of being allowed to just kind of tune out and be taken into another world, an atmosphere, an environment that is being created entirely for you by somebody else's voice.
He was incapable of untruth. Never tampered with a fact, never altered a disagreeable word to suit that pleasure or convenience of any mortal being, least of all of his own children, who, sprung from his loins, should be aware from childhood that life is difficult.
I was excited to go to work every day because I was going to work and reading this extraordinary novel, and it was my work, but it was pleasure.
I never knew. You pimped with your ignorance. You pimped by never learning how to make love with her, so she had to look elsewhere. You pimped by giving opportunities. You pimped by being a bore and a fool, so now somebody who isn't a bore and a fool is playing about with her in Cedar Road. There has to come a point when you leave it behind and say, I'm sorry, this is Mr. Greene, it's not yours anymore. Just for the moment, it's entirely mine. I've observed it, I've absorbed it, I've done as much as I can to digest it. And now I have to be Bendrix for a while.